Imagine for a second, right, that you have just achieved your biggest, most ambitious career goal.
Oh, the dream.
Right. Just put yourself in that moment. The grueling years of late nights, the endless strategic networking, the constant anxiety of performance reviews, it finally paid off.
Yeah, you finally made it.
Exactly. The papers are signed, the congratulations are formally delivered, and your name is, like, quite literally on the door.
It's a great feeling.
It is. You sit in your new office, you look out the window, and you think, I've done it. I have finally arrived. But what if I told you that you haven't actually crossed the finish line at all? What if instead you have just blindly walked into a secret initiation?
Yeah, it completely shatters that whole romanticized image we hold of success,
Oh, totally.
Because you expect a coronation, but the reality is you've just stepped up to the starting line of a completely new, far more psychological gauntlet.
Which is really the perfect jumping off point for what we are getting into today. So for this deep dive, we're pulling apart a truly eye-opening viral LinkedIn article. It was just published a couple of weeks ago on March 31st, 2026.
Very recent.
Yeah, super recent. It's by Irina Nikitina, and it's titled, You Made Partner. Now the real onboarding begins. And our mission today is to basically decode this unwritten, entirely unspoken syllabus of leadership initiation that absolutely nobody hands you when you get promoted.
Right, because they really don't.
They don't. And we want to help you, the listener, whether you just made partner or became a director or really stepped into any major leadership transition. We want to help you understand the hidden tests you're about to face and, more importantly, why you are facing them.
Yeah, and the author introduces this framework that fundamentally reframes career advancement. Getting the promotion, securing that new title, it's really merely passing the entrance exam.
Just the entrance exam.
Exactly. It proves you have the technical capabilities to be allowed into the room. But the first 12 to 18 months in that new role, that is the actual test.
Oh.
And it's designed to see if you can actually survive the room.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because Nikitina breaks this hidden initiation down into 4 highly specific mechanisms. And the transition into the first one is jarring, mostly because it hits you right when you're feeling the most triumphant.
Yeah, your guard is totally down.
Right. You naturally assume your new title comes with autonomy, power, maybe a little bit of glamour. But instead, the firm just hands you unpaid chores.
Yes.
Nikitina calls this first mechanism honorary service.
And the way this mechanism is deployed is incredibly insidious. I mean, because it comes wrapped in prestige.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, you are approached by a senior member of the firm, usually someone you deeply respect, right?
Okay.
And they offer you what sounds like an exclusive opportunity.
Right.
They pitch it by saying something like, we would absolutely love for you to represent the firm on this ethics committee. Or maybe they ask you to chair a local charity board. The trap is essentially set with the phrase, it's critical work, and you're exactly the right person to handle it.
And I mean, who has the willpower to say no to that?
Nobody.
Your ego is still so inflated from the promotion, and now the senior leadership is validating you as their chosen representative for this highly visible committee.
But the pitch masks the actual mechanism at play, because once you accept, the reality sets in.
Right.
You have just committed your evenings to drafting bar association ethics guidelines, or, you're spending your weekends coordinating charity galas.
And none of that bills.
Exactly. None of these hours, Bill. None of this work moves the needle on the financial metrics you are actually being judged on. The exposure is real, but it is diffuse and entirely uncompensated.
Initially I read that and thought, it feels like winning a massive pie-eating contest, right? And the grand prize is just, more pie. But pie you don't even get credit for eating.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But looking closer at the mechanics of this, it's not just an annoying reward. It functions more like a stress test on a bridge.
Oh, absolutely.
The firm isn't just looking for free labor. They are deliberately applying weight to your schedule. They want to see if the structural integrity of your loyalty holds up before they let the heavy traffic of real partnership secrets drive over you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Because the article points out that declining this offer risks you getting slapped with the absolute worst label you can get in a partnership, which is not a team player.
The kiss of death.
Right. But I do have to push back on the ethics of this a little bit. I mean, are the senior partners just hazing the new person? Is this just a malicious dumping of unglamorous grunt work on the rookie?
What's fascinating here is that the author explicitly rejects the hazing theory.
Really?
Yeah, it is a highly calibrated psychological test. The senior leadership isn't just offloading administrative burden. They are observing your transformation.
Okay, observing it how?
Well, up until this promotion, you were rewarded for being a stellar individual contributor. You ate what you killed, essentially.
Right, it's all about your own metrics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the firm needs to know, are you willing to invest your finite resources into the collective group before the group fully invests its trust in you?
Wow.
They are forcing a mindset shift from, individual looking out for myself to steward looking out for the firm.
That distinction changes the entire framing. I mean, it transforms a frustrating chore into this deep loyalty mechanism. But let's follow that causal chain, right?
Sure.
Say you pass the stress test. You sacrifice your weekends, you do the unbillable work, and you prove you are a steward of the firm. You would logically assume that the firm will now drop the curtain and trust you with the whole truth about the business.
You would think so.
But they actively refuse to do that. And that brings us to the second mechanism of this initiation. Right. Nicotina refers to this phase as information rationing. You are technically holding a seat at the table now, but you quickly realize that the table you're sitting at is missing several critical legs.
Yeah, you start getting calendar invites to these high-level meetings.
Yeah.
You receive operational details that were previously locked away from you. Things like practice growth targets, granular staffing decisions, client development priorities.
Stuff that makes you feel important.
Exactly. It creates this illusion that you are finally getting the inside scoop.
But the illusion is maintained by what is visibly provided, while the test lies in what is systematically withheld.
Right.
As a newly minted partner, you are deliberately kept in the dark about the macro financial picture. You aren't briefed on high-stakes lateral hires being negotiated in the background.
Which is crazy to me.
And you are completely insulated from the actual underlying political dynamics between the senior partners. And perhaps the most disorienting part, you aren't told which decisions were already finalized in private before the official meeting even began.
Oh, man. And they excuse this rationing with logic that sounds so incredibly reasonable on the surface. They put a hand on your shoulder and say, we just want you to get comfortable with your current responsibilities first. Don't burden yourself with the macro financials yet.
It sounds so supportive.
Right, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author highlights a bizarre catch-22. You are essentially being required to vote on high-level business decisions, while the firm actively hides the contextual data you need to make those decisions logically.
Which forces you into an incredibly vulnerable position. I mean, put yourself in that boardroom. You are looking at a spreadsheet or a strategic proposal, and because you are a high performer, your brain automatically spots the inconsistencies.
If you're not an idiot.
Right. You realize the math doesn't fully add up, or that there's an obvious strategic angle entirely absent from the discussion. Nicotina's core point is that noticing those glaring gaps before anyone explains them to you, that is the intended feature of the system, not a bug.
Oh, wow.
The rationing is a deliberate feature of your onboarding.
So if you are listening to this right now and you have ever felt completely out of your depth or out of the loop right after securing a big promotion, let this be your validation. It is not a mistake. You haven't just been forgotten by the mailing list.
Definitely not. It is a calculated phase of integration designed to measure your tolerance for ambiguity. Leadership is rarely about making decisions with perfect data.
Very true.
So they're watching your real-time reaction to the fog of war. Do you panic and demand access to financial records you haven't earned the political capital to see? Do you make reckless assumptions? Or do you navigate the information gap with discretion, patience, and careful questioning?
Wow. Okay, so you've accepted the unbillable grunt work, and you've accepted that you are flying blind with the financials. In both of those scenarios, you are relatively passive.
Yeah, you're just absorbing it.
You are enduring the pressure. But eventually, the firm requires you to go on the offensive. They force you into active, visible conflict. This brings us to the third phase, which the text calls the bad guy phase, and it's executed through ritual assignments.
This mechanism, it directly assaults everything that made you successful as an individual performer. Up to this point, your success was tied to your personal brand, right? Your correct answers, your specific ideas.
Right.
Now the system assigns you a deeply uncomfortable task. You will be instructed to stand in front of your former peers and defend a policy change that you vehemently opposed behind closed doors.
Ooh.
Or you might be tasked with delivering harsh news that a senior partner really should be delivering. You are forced to represent a position that fundamentally clashes with your own.
And my immediate human instinct in that scenario is just absolute resistance. I mean, if I think a policy is terrible, why should I be the face of it?
Yeah.
Why am I being used as a human shield for a controversial decision I wasn't even given the data to properly evaluate in the first place?
Well, that instinct right there to protect your personal credibility over the firm's decision, that is exactly what the ritual assignment is designed to break.
Man, that's brutal.
It is. The vital why behind this mechanism is brutal but necessary. Will you take a public hit for the collective group? The text makes it undeniably clear that partners who cannot stomach this simply do not survive in governance roles.
Because they can't be trusted.
Exactly. If you are a leader who requires personal alignment with every single decision you are asked to enforce, you are a localized liability to the partnership. Effective leadership governance requires the illusion, and eventually the reality, of a unified front.
So you are proving that the structural integrity of the firm is more important than your personal comfort or your desire to be liked. That is a heavy psychological burden.
Very heavy.
But the article introduces a fourth mechanism that compounds that burden exponentially. Nicotina calls it emotional conditioning. And she argues this will actually be the absolute hardest part of your entire first year.
Oh, yeah, because this final mechanism attacks your social foundation.
Right.
The people you worked alongside yesterday, the peers you vented with over drinks, the colleagues whose kids' birthdays you remember, your actual friends, they are now your team. The organizational chart changes in a single day, and the system expects you to have processed the massive emotional fallout of that relational shift practically overnight.
You are just instructed to draw a professional line in the sand. And according to the text, being professional in this context is really just a euphemism for making serious, career-altering decisions about people you know intimately without letting that personal history visibly compromise your judgment.
Which is incredibly hard.
Think about the mental gymnastics required there. I mean, imagine sitting down to give a poor performance review to someone who covered for you when you were going through a personal crisis 3 years ago.
It's awful.
How do you flip a switch and become the boss without looking like a complete traitor to your own history?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it exposes the profound structural isolation of leadership. There is a deeply resonant comment on the article left by a reader named Senya Przadeeva, who validated the severe emotional toll of this exact transition.
What did she say?
She noted that being a partner to other partners and managing former peers is an incredibly challenging job. The financial rewards are there at the end of the day, sure, but the psychological cost of redrawing those boundaries is immense.
Right.
You aren't just updating your email signature. You are forcibly rewriting your social identity within the ecosystem.
You're literally dismantling your old support network while simultaneously being tested by your new one. So when you stack these four invisible pressures, you've got the unpaid honorary service testing your stewardship, the information rationing testing your comfort with ambiguity, the ritual assignments testing your willingness to take a hit, and the emotional conditioning isolating you from your peers. It creates an absolute pressure cooker.
A total crucible.
So how do high-performing individuals usually react when they are unknowingly dropped into this?
Well, the author observes that most new partners, lacking a map for this terrain, fall into one of two behavioral traps. These are extreme default instincts, and unfortunately, relying on either of them will severely damage your long-term viability in the firm.
Okay, so the first trap is what Nicotina calls the sword comes out. And, the psychology behind this makes total sense. You are a high performer. Your entire career has rewarded you for being the smartest person in the room, the one who spots inefficiencies and fixes them.
Naturally.
Now you finally have the institutional standing and the title to mandate those fixes. So you start swinging. You push aggressive changes, you openly challenge legacy decisions, and you basically signal to the senior partners that there is a new sheriff in town ready to optimize the firm.
Right.
You turn your initial 12 months into a relentless political campaign.
And it feels like decisive leadership to the person swinging the sword. It feels proactive. But the fatal flaw connects right back to the information rationing mechanism we talked about.
Because you don't know everything.
Exactly. You are trying to aggressively dismantle a system that you do not yet fully understand. You are swinging at targets while looking through a keyhole. The established partners see this not as visionary leadership, but as dangerous recklessness. You're basically proving you lack the discipline to gather context before acting.
Wow, okay. So if swinging the sword is the trap of arrogance, the natural opposite is the trap of fear. The second trap is simply, you go quiet.
Yes, imposter syndrome kicks in.
Right. You realize you are flying blind, so you decide your best survival strategy is observation. You decide to wait until you know every variable to avoid looking naive. You don't want to back the wrong horse or say the wrong thing to the senior partners, so you just sit at the leadership table taking copious notes and contributing absolutely nothing.
And this strategy is obviously rooted in self-preservation, but the text offers a stark warning about how it's actually perceived. The author writes, "Silence reads as absence."
Oh, that's good.
It is. The established partnership is not sitting around wondering what brilliant, complex thoughts are brewing in your head. They operate on observable data. If you do not speak, they simply conclude that you have nothing of value to contribute. You render yourself politically invisible.
So, what does this all mean? I mean, if you can't come in swinging the sword because you lack context, but you also can't just sit there quietly taking notes because you'll be deemed useless,
Yeah.
what is the actual achievable goal of this entire first-year initiation?
The core takeaway Nikitina distills is that the first year is not a test of volume. It's not about how loud you are or how many sweeping changes you can mandate.
Right.
Conversely, it's not a test of pure compliance, just quietly executing orders. The singular, ultimate goal is building a reputation for judgment. Yes, your decision-making style becomes your radar. The firm is watching how you process incomplete information, how you navigate emotional conflicts with former peers, and how consistently you prioritize the firm's stability over your own ego.
It all distills down to judgment. And actually, speaking of how judgment is evaluated, there is a mind-blowing nugget right at the end of this article that completely shatters a core myth of the business world.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. The author explicitly states that the partnership table is not a meritocracy of ideas. I had to read that sentence twice.
It's shocking for a lot of people.
We are so deeply conditioned by the corporate ladder to believe that the smartest argument, the most thorough data analysis, or the most logically sound presentation will just automatically win the room. But the reality is, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And it is a bitter pill for high performers to swallow because technical, merit-based excellence is the exact currency that bought their ticket to the table in the first place. But the mechanics of influence at the highest levels of leadership operate on an entirely different frequency. What actually moves decisions, according to the source material, is a complex alchemy of timing, established relationships, the strategic framing of the issue, and the accumulated credibility of the person speaking.
It's all about relationships and credibility. I mean, you could have the most mathematically perfect solution to a firm crisis, but it just doesn't matter how right you are if the room doesn't trust your judgment yet.
Precisely. Timing, framing, and credibility cannot be hacked or rushed. They must be built deliberately through the crucible of those first-year tests. Nikitina encapsulates this entire dynamic with a phrase that is profoundly clarifying. She writes, "The table doesn't change you, it reveals you."
Wow.
The table doesn't change you, it reveals you. That just strips away every excuse available to a new leader. You can no longer blame the weight of the title or the stress of the new responsibilities for poor behavior.
Yep.
The title merely acts as a magnifying glass, basically amplifying the character and the judgment you already possessed. Which leaves us with a critical, forward-looking question to consider. If the leadership table merely reveals who you are, what kind of internal pre-work are you doing right now, long before the promotion is ever offered?
That's a great question.
Look closely at the 4 mechanisms we discussed today. Are these secret initiation rituals actually designed to select the best, most visionary leaders who will innovate the future?
Ooh.
Or are they simply designed to select the best survivors of the current system, people willing to endure the stress tests and maintain the status quo? I encourage you to analyze the culture of your own workplace tomorrow morning. Look at the leaders who succeed there and decide which game you are actually playing.
Yeah. Are you training to be a visionary, or are you just training to survive the initiation? Remember, getting your name on the door isn't the finish line. The moment you see that fresh paint, the real test has just begun. Keep your eyes open, stay curious, and keep questioning the unwritten rules around you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you next time.